A 4-decade war has bled the Duchy of Ironwall white. The Duke, Alaric Blackwood, is a man forged in steel, but even he knows this bloody stalemate must end. The price? A bride. He agrees to marry Lady Evelina de Cressy, the daughter of his most bitter rival, seeing her as nothing but a signature on a peace treaty. He expected a meek pawn to be locked in a tower. He got a strategist, a survivor, and the one woman capable of shattering the fortress around his heart. But what if the war was never meant to end? The wind across the Ironwall Pass carried the scent of pulverized stone and old pines. It was a harsh, unforgiving smell, one that matched the mood of the man who ruled it. Alaric Blackwood, the Duke of Ironwall, stood on the battlements of his ancestral keep, his gaze fixed on the winding road below. He was not a man given to flights of fancy. He was a man of ledgers, maps, and troop movements. Today, however, he was a man waiting for a bride. The war with Baron de Cressy of Morehaven had raged for 40 years, claiming his grandfather and his father. It had bled his lands, depleted his treasury, and carved deep lines of exhaustion into the faces of his people. Alaric, at 32, looked closer to 50. His dark hair was already threaded with silver at the temples, and his eyes, the color of winter grey, held no warmth. The treaty had been a brutal negotiation. Land concessions, trade routes, and the repatriation of prisoners. But the Baron, a stubborn and prideful man, had demanded one final, binding element to ensure the peace held. A marriage. His daughter for the Duke's title. Alaric's hand tightened on the stone merlon. He despised this. It felt like a surrender, not a victory. He was exchanging the sword for a ring, and it chafed. His captain of the guard, Gideon Thorne, approached, his heavy boots echoing on the stone. Thorne was a man as blunt as his name, loyal to a fault, and wary of anything that was not a declared enemy. "The carriage has been sighted, Your Grace," Thorne said, his voice a low rumble. "They fly the Morehaven banner and a white flag of truce." Alaric merely grunted. "See that the honor guard is in place. No celebrations. This is a state matter, not a festival." "And the lady?" Thorne asked, hesitating. "She is to be shown to the guest wing. The chambers are prepared." "The guest wing, Your Grace? Not the Duchess's new apartments?" Alaric turned his head, his stare cold enough to stall the wind. "She is the daughter of my enemy, Thorne. She will become my wife by contract, but she will earn the apartments of the Duchess. Until then she is a guest, a hostage, if we are to be plain." Thorne nodded, understanding the Duke's brutal pragmatism. "As you command." Alaric watched the carriage, a small black box crawling up the mountain pass, insignificant against the vast, jagged landscape. He felt nothing. No anticipation, no curiosity, not even anger. He felt only the familiar, hollow ache of duty. He had been a duke since he was 16, a commander since he was 20. He had forgotten how to be just a man. This marriage was simply another burden to be shouldered, another sacrifice for his people. He had no room for a wife, for warmth, for the softness that life outside of war promised. He was a creature of loneliness, and he preferred it. It kept him sharp. An hour later, the carriage rattled into the main courtyard. The honor guard stood at rigid attention, their steel, polished helms reflecting the grim, overcast sky. Alaric had descended to the courtyard, his black, unadorned uniform a stark contrast to the small, colourful banner of Morehaven. The carriage door opened. A small woman was handed down by a footman. She was not what he had expected. He had imagined someone loud and haughty like her father, or a simpering, terrified girl. Lady Evelina de Cressy was neither. She was small, swathed in a practical dark blue travelling cloak. Her face was pale, her features fine but unremarkable. Her hair, a plain shade of brown, was pulled back severely. She kept her eyes lowered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked less like a noble lady and more like a poor relation, brought along as a companion. Beside her, a stern-looking woman who could only be her lady's maid, Beatrice, looked around the courtyard with open disdain. Evelina stepped forward, and, in a low, clear voice that did not tremble, said, "Your Grace, I am Evelina de Cressy." She curtsied. It was precise, correct, and utterly devoid of emotion. Alaric looked down at her. He saw a pawn, a necessary component of the piece. Nothing more. "Lady Evelina," he replied, his voice flat. "Welcome to Ironwall. You will find the air sharp, but the fortress is secure." It was a statement, not a welcome. She lifted her head then, and for the first time, her eyes met his. They were not brown, as he had assumed, but a deep, startling shade of green. They held no fear. They held no warmth. They held only a profound, unsettling intelligence. And perhaps, he thought for a fleeting second, the same hollow loneliness he saw in the mirror every morning. She glanced past him, at the high, grey walls, the armed guards, the barred windows of the lower levels. "A fortress, Your Grace," she said softly, her gaze returning to his. "Or a prison. It depends entirely on which side of the gate one stands." Alaric's brow twitched. The pawn had a voice. "You stand on the inside, madam," he said curtly. "By treaty." He turned on his heel. "Thorn, have the lady and her attendant shown to their rooms. The wedding will be tomorrow, at dawn. There is much work to be done." He did not look back. He had a treaty to review, grain shortages to manage, and a patrol roster to approve. He had no time for a sharp-tongued bride. He strode back into the shadows of his keep, leaving her standing in the cold, grey light of the courtyard, the first casualty of his hard-won peace. The wedding was a mockery of the word. It took place in the keep's ancient, stone-floored sept, a place more suited to war councils than vows. The only attendees were Alaric's council, Captain Thorn, the elderly and pragmatic Steward Hastings, and Lord Geoffrey Vance. Vance was Alaric's cousin, a man with a politician's smile and a merchant's eyes. He had been the loudest voice advocating for this marriage, citing the economic benefits of the trade routes that would reopen. Alaric trusted his counsel, but he did not particularly like his cousin. Evelina was dressed in a simple gown of deep blue, borrowed from the keep's stores. She had brought no bridal finery. She spoke her vows in the same clear, empty voice she had used in the courtyard. Alaric spoke his in turn, his voice the resonant, flat command of a general. The priest, a nervous man named Father Willem, pronounced them Duke and Duchess of Ironwall. Alaric did not kiss his bride. He offered his arm. "Duchess, we have matters to attend to." "What matters, Your Grace?" she asked, her hand resting on his arm with a lightness that was almost imperceptible. "The signing of the final treaty clauses. Your presence is required as a signatory." She nodded, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "Of course." In the council chamber, she stood behind him, as he and the Moorhaven envoy, who had travelled with her, signed the thick parchment. When it was her turn, her signature was clean and strong. Evelina de Cressy. She paused, then added a small dash, and Blackwood. Lord Vance oozed forward. "A toast to the Duchess, a beacon of peace, and a vision of beauty. Ironwall is blessed." Evelina's gaze swept over him, cool and appraising. "You are too kind, Lord Vance. I am merely a component of the peace. It is the treaty, not the bride, that is to be celebrated." Vance's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "Such modesty, Your Grace. Humility is a fine virtue. Alaric watched the exchange. She had dismissed Vance as neatly as one might swat a fly. He felt an unwelcome flicker of not admiration, but interest. That night he visited her chambers in the guest wing. It was expected. It was part of the treaty, the consummation clause, to ensure the alliance. She was standing by the window, her maid Beatrice brushing out her hair. When he entered, Beatrice curtsied low and fled the room. Evelina did not turn. "Your Grace, have you come to inspect the terms of your purchase?" His jaw tightened. "Do not be insolent, madam. It does not suit you." "And what does suit me, Duke?" She turned, her hair unbound, falling over the plain nightgown. She looked younger, more vulnerable, but her eyes were still shields. A cage. Silence. Obedience. Your safety suits me. The prosperity of Ironwall suits me. This alliance suits me. Your personal feelings are your own affair. He walked toward her. He was a large man, and he was used to people shrinking from him. She did not. She stood her ground, her hands clasped, her chin high. "The treaty demands a union," he stated, his voice low. "The treaty demands a potential heir, Your Grace. It does not demand a union. A union implies two parties meeting. This is an annexation." He stopped, frustrated by her words. She was twisting his intent. "You will be my wife." "I am your wife," she corrected. "Now, what is it you want, Alaric?" The use of his name was a small shock. No one used it. Not Thorn, not Vance. Only perhaps his father, long dead. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the rigid control she was exerting over her own fear. And in that moment, the Duke, the strategist, saw his own loneliness reflected back at him. She was as trapped by this as he was. He had come to perform a duty, a cold, necessary act. But looking at her, he found himself incapable of it. To force her, to treat her like a spoil of war, was distasteful. It was a line he had not realized he possessed. "I want," he said slowly, "the war to be over. I want my people to be fed. I want the raids from Moorhaven to stop." "And they will," she said. "Will they?" he countered, moving past her to look out the window. "Your father is a snake. This treaty is paper. I need loyalty. I need to know the woman who shares my name is not a spy in my own keep." Her sharp intake of breath was the first genuine emotion he had heard from her. "A spy?" she whispered, her voice hardening. "You think I wanted this? To be traded like a prize mare? To be sent to the Iron Duke in his mountain fortress? I am a prisoner here, Duke, but I am not a traitor." "Prove it," he said, turning back to her. "How?" "For now," he said, moving to the door, "you will do nothing. You will not leave the keep without my guard. You will not send or receive messages without my seal. And you will move into the Duchess's apartments. It will not do for the household to think their duke is unable to control his own wife." He left. He did not touch her. He returned to his own cold, solitary chamber, and for the first time in years, Alaric Blackwood felt something other than duty or anger. He felt deeply, profoundly unsettled. The loneliness he had curated as a shield suddenly felt, for a single terrifying moment, like a self-inflicted wound. Weeks turned into a month. Evelina, now installed in the cavernous Duchess's apartments, proved to be a model prisoner, or a model wife, depending on one's perspective. She was quiet, dignified, and invisible. She attended the sparse meals in the great hall, sitting at the far end of the long table, a silent observer to Alaric's terse conversations with his council. She spent her days in the neglected library, a place Alaric had not entered in years, or walking the battlements, always with 2 of Thorn's guards 10 paces behind. The household staff, led by the gruff but fair-minded housekeeper, Mrs. Croft, watched her with suspicion. They were Ironwall people. They had lost brothers, sons, and husbands to Moorhaven. The new Duchess was the blood of their enemy. But Evelina did not demand or complain. One day, Mrs. Croft found her in the library, a thick ledger open on the desk. "Your Grace," the housekeeper said stiffly, "may I be of assistance?" "Mrs. Croft," Evelina said, not looking up. "The household accounts, the expenditures for firewood and lamp oil are inefficient." Mrs. Croft bristled. "We manage as we always have, Your Grace." Evelina finally looked up, her green eyes clear. "You manage, but you waste. The south wing is fully heated, yet no one resides there. The guards in the east tower are allocated double rations of oil, yet their patrols are no longer than the west tower. Why?" The housekeeper was stunned into silence. "And," Evelina continued, tapping a line in the book, "the contract for grain is with a merchant from the south. The price is 30% higher than the market rate in Moorhaven." "We do not trade with Moorhaven," Mrs. Croft said, her voice like ice. "You do now," Evelina said simply. "There is a treaty. My father's lands produce a surplus of grain. Your lands produce ironwood and wool. A direct trade route, as outlined in the treaty, would save this keep." She calculated quickly. "Thousands of crowns by winter." She was not asking. She was stating a fact. That evening, Alaric found the revised household ledgers on his desk. He studied them. Her handwriting was as neat as her signature. The calculations were precise. The logic was flawless. She had identified the same inefficiencies he had planned to tackle, but she had also offered a solution he had not. Use the treaty. He was impressed. He sought her out, not in her chambers, but in the library. She was surrounded by books on crop rotation and regional maps. "You have been busy," he said from the doorway. She did not startle. "My time is my own. I prefer to use it. These proposals," he tapped the ledgers he carried, "are sound. But the grain trade with Moorhaven relies on the Kestrel Pass. It is not secure." "It is if you garrison it," she countered, standing. "But your maps are out of date. The K-Monitor Pass is faster, and the spring floods will not have damaged the bridge at 3 Rivers, as they are not due for 2 more months. A convoy could make the journey and return in 3 weeks." He stared at her. She knew the geography of her homeland intimately. Of course she did. But she was using that knowledge to help him, to help Ironwall. "I will consider it," he said, the words feeling foreign. A strange, quiet pattern began. He would find other notes on his desk. A suggestion for renegotiating the forge's coal supply, an observation on the weakness of the south wall drainage, which could freeze and crack the stones in winter. He never acknowledged them directly, but slowly he began to implement them. The castle ran more smoothly. The tenants were less restless. He found himself seeking the quiet end of the hall at dinner just to watch her. She ate simply, her focus absolute. She spoke only when spoken to, her answers always brief and intelligent. She was a puzzle, a quiet, disciplined, and intensely smart woman. The loneliness he had weaponized was beginning to feel lonely. Then, the twist. A supply convoy, one Alaric had personally routed, was ambushed. Not in the Kestrel Pass, but on the main northern road, deep within Ironwall territory. It was a route that was supposed to be completely secure. Thorn brought the news, his face a mask of fury. "It was a slaughter, Your Grace. 20 men dead, all the supplies gone, burned or taken." Alaric's blood ran cold. "Bandits?" "No bandits. Thorn spat. This was professional. Fast. They knew the route, and they knew the guard rotation. But that's not the worst of it. He threw a small, leather-wrapped object onto Alaric's map table. It was a dagger. "We found this on one of the bodies," Thorn said, his voice dangerously low. "My man. Pinned to his chest." Alaric looked at the dagger. The hilt was simple, but the pommel was inlaid with a single, recognizable crest, the hawk of House de Crécy. His head snapped up, his grey eyes turning to chips of ice. "Where is she?" "In the library, as always," Thorn growled. Alaric stormed from the room, his long strides eating up the stone corridors. He burst into the library, Thorn at his heels. Evelina looked up from a book, her expression placid. He slammed the dagger onto the table in front of her. It skidded across the polished wood, stopping inches from her hand. Her eyes widened, just slightly. "Can you explain this?" Alaric demanded, his voice a low, vibrating growl of command. Evelina looked at the dagger. Her face went pale, the first true flush of emotion he had seen in her. It was not guilt. It was fear. "That is my father's crest," she whispered. 20 of my men are dead," Alaric said, leaning over the table, his presence overwhelming the room. "A supply convoy, vital to our winter stores, is destroyed. Your father's blade is left as a calling card. The treaty is not a month old, and he has already broken it." "No," Evelina said, standing so quickly her chair scraped loudly on the floor. "He wouldn't. Not like this." "He did," Alaric roared, sweeping a stack of books from the table. "And you, all this time, in my library, reading my maps, my ledgers, how much did you tell them? Was this your plan all along? The helpful, quiet little wife, making suggestions? You accuse me of treason?" she gasped, her voice shaking with outrage. "I accuse you of spying," he shot back. "I accuse you of being your father's daughter. You said it yourself. You are a prisoner here. What better way to free yourself than to help your father cripple me from the inside? How dare you?" she cried. "I have done nothing but try to what? Survive?" he sneered. "You gave me advice on the trade routes. You knew exactly which roads my convoys would take. I suggested the Monitor Pass, not the Northern Road. A diversion, to make me trust you, while your father's men hit me where I was strongest. It was a test of my defenses, and you helped them. No." She was trembling, but her eyes blazed with a fire he had never seen. "I did not. I swear on my mother's grave, I knew nothing of this." "Your oaths are worthless," Alaric said, his voice dropping back to the freezing cold he was famous for. "They are the oaths of Moorhaven." He turned to his captain. "Thorn, post guards at her door. She is not to leave these apartments. Her maid is to be confined as well. She is, as of this moment, a prisoner of the state." "Alaric, no," she pleaded, using his name in her desperation. "You are wrong. This is a mistake. It's a trap." He paused at the door, his hand on the iron latch. "Yes, Duchess, it was. And I walked right into it." He shut the door, the heavy thud echoing in the stone silence. He left her there, her face ashen, her world collapsing. And as he walked away, the small spark of warmth he had begun to feel guttered and died, replaced by the familiar, cold burn of betrayal. For 2 days, Evelina was kept a true prisoner. 2 guards, unmoving and silent, stood outside her door. Her maid, Beatrice, was confined with her. The young woman was terrified, weeping quietly in a corner, but Evelina's mind was racing. "They think I am a traitor," Evelina said aloud, pacing the length of the solar. "They are barbarians," Beatrice sniffed. "They are Ironwall men. What else can you expect?" "No," Evelina stopped. "This is wrong. It's too clumsy." "Clumsy, my lady. 20 men are dead. Exactly. Evelina wheeled around. My father, Baron de Cressy, is a proud man, a hard man. But he is not a fool. He signed the treaty because Moorhaven is starving. We needed this peace as much as Ironwall. To break it, a month later, in such a public and insulting way, he would lose all his allies. It makes no sense. Then who? Beatrice asked, her eyes wide. Evelina looked at the dagger, which Alaric had left on the table in his rage. She picked it up. This is my father's crest, she murmured. But it's wrong. She ran a finger over the hawk. The engraving, it's too sharp, too new. My father's men carry blades that are decades old, worn with use. And this leather, it's not Moorhaven leather. It's thicker. It's Ironwall hide, cured with northern pine tar. I can smell it. She dropped the dagger as if it were a snake. It's a plant. Someone within Ironwall staged the attack and planted this dagger to blame my father. The implications hit her like a physical blow. Someone wanted the war to continue. Someone was profiting from it. Someone who had access to Ironwall troops, roots, and a Moorhaven-style dagger. She had to warn Alaric, but he would never believe her. He saw her as the enemy. She banged on the door. One of the guards, a young man named Perrin, cracked it open. Your Grace, you are not to be disturbed. Get Captain Thorn, she commanded, drawing on an authority she didn't know she possessed. Now, tell him it is a matter of state security. The guard hesitated, but the urgency in her voice, the command of a true duchess, made him nod. Thorn arrived minutes later, his expression like thunder. What is this, my lady? More games? Captain, she said, pushing the dagger through the crack in the door. Smell the leather on the hilt. Thorn, bewildered, did as she asked. He sniffed it. His brows drew together. It's Ironwall cure. And look at the blade, she pressed. The nicks on it. They are fresh, made to look old, and the crest is newly cut. This is a forgery. A very good one, but a forgery. Thorn looked from the dagger to her face, his suspicion warring with his duty. My father did not do this, Captain. Someone in this keep did. Someone who knew the convoy's route. Someone who wants the war to start again. Someone who is betraying your duke. Thorn's blood ran cold. He knew, intimately, who set the patrol routes. He, Alaric, and the council. Who? Thorn growled. Who benefits? Evelina asked, her voice a low, intense whisper. Who on the Duke's council was so eager for this marriage treaty, yet seemed disappointed when I arrived? Who manages the trade contracts that are now void? Who controls the mines and forges that supply the war? Thorn's eyes widened in dawning horror. There was only one man. Lord Vance. He profits from the war, Evelina said. He sells the ironwood from the Duke's own forests, I'll wager. The treaty would end his personal wealth. Thorn was a soldier, not a politician, but he was not stupid. He knew Vance's reputation for greed. I need to tell the Duke. No, Evelina said, gripping his arm through the doorway. You cannot. If Vance is the traitor, his spies are everywhere. He may even have men in your own guard. If the Duke confronts him, Vance will deny it, and he will know we are on to him. He will simply be more careful. Thorn stared at her. The woman his Duke had called a spy was now thinking 2 steps ahead of his enemies. What do you suggest, Your Grace? He asked. The Your Grace no longer an insult, but a statement of fact. We need proof, she said. We need his ledgers. We need to find his messenger. Until then, you must convince the Duke to trust me, or at least to pretend to. He is not a man who pretends, Thorn said grimly. Then he must learn. Tell him what you found. Tell him about the dagger, but tell him to do nothing. Tell him to watch. Vance will overplay his hand. Traitors always do. Thorn took the dagger and left. Alaric was in the strategy room, staring at the map, his face a mask of cold rage. "She is lying," he said, when Thorn had finished recounting the conversation. "With respect, Your Grace," Thorn said, "I smelled the leather myself. It's from our own tanneries, and the blade, it's a cheap copy. I'd be embarrassed to call it a weapon." Alaric slammed his fist on the table. "So he's being framed. She is, Your Grace, and her father. Someone wants you to think Moorhaven broke the treaty. Vance," Alaric said, the name tasting like ash, "his own blood, his cousin. The Duchess suspects him," Thorn confirmed. "She believes he's a war profiteer. She also believes he has spies in the keep." "She's clever," Alaric murmured. He sat down heavily, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a cold, weary dread. He had accused her. He had called her a traitor. He had wanted her to be guilty because it was easier than facing the truth that the betrayal came from within. "She also said you should do nothing," Thorn added, "that you should watch him. Let him make a mistake." Alaric looked at the door. He was the Duke. He should be giving the orders. Instead, he was being advised by his prisoner, a woman he had deeply wronged. He stood. "Release her. Quietly. Tell the guards it was a misunderstanding. And, Your Grace, tell no one else. As far as the household is concerned, the Duchess is still in disgrace. Let Vance believe his ruse worked. Let him believe I am a fool, blinded by rage. And what should I tell her, Your Grace?" Alaric paused. "Tell her nothing. Tell her I am considering the evidence." He could not bring himself to apologize. Not yet. That night, dinner in the great hall was a tense, silent affair. Evelina was released, and she took her seat at the far end of the table. Lord Vance, at Alaric's right hand, was in high spirits. "A dreadful business, Your Grace," Vance said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Dreadful. To think the Baron would be so bold. But it clarifies things, does it not? We cannot trust Moorhaven. The war must be resumed. Our honor demands it." Alaric looked up from his plate, his grey eyes flat. "You are eager for more bloodshed, cousin." Vance laughed, a rich, oily sound. "I am eager for Ironwall's honor, Duke. We cannot show weakness." Alaric's gaze drifted down the long table. Evelina was watching them. Her face was pale, composed. She met his gaze, and for a long, stretched-out second, the world narrowed to just the two of them. She knew he was testing Vance. He knew she was watching. It was a silent, shared secret. She held his gaze, and in her eyes he did not see the fear of a prisoner or the hatred of an enemy. He saw an ally. He broke the gaze first, turning back to his cousin. "We will not be rash, Geoffrey," Alaric said, his voice calm. "We will mourn our dead, and we will consider our options." Vance looked surprised. He had expected the Iron Duke to declare war by sundown. Alaric rose. "I am tired. Duchess, attend me." The court gasped. He had not summoned her since the wedding. Evelina rose, her face impassive, and followed him from the hall. He did not take her to her apartments, or his. He led her to the battlements, to the very spot where he had first watched her carriage arrive. The wind was high, whipping her hair from its pins. They stood in silence for a long time, the wind howling around them. "The dagger was a forgery," he said finally, not looking at her. "I know," she replied. "The attack was meant to break the treaty." "Yes. Vance is the most likely suspect. He controls the ironwood trade. The war makes him rich." "Yes." He turned to her, the darkness hiding his expression. "I was wrong. I accused you unjustly." It was the closest he would come to an apology. Evelina looked out over the dark, sprawling lands of Ironwall. His lands, her lands, now. You are a man of war, Your Grace. You see enemies everywhere. It is how you have survived. But you, he said, his voice softer than he intended, you are the daughter of my enemy. Why help me? Why not let Vance destroy me? She turned to face him, the wind pressing her skirts against her. Because, Duke, you are my husband, and Ironwall is my home, I will not have it torn apart by a greedy traitor. I told you before, it is a fortress or a prison. I have decided to make it a fortress. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as a treaty, not as a spy, but as a woman of sharp intelligence and a strength that rivaled his own. The loneliness he had lived with his entire life suddenly felt unbearable. He had a visceral, aching need to reach out, to touch her, to bridge the gap between them. But he was Alaric Blackwood. He did not know how. So instead, he gave her the only thing he could. We need proof. To move against him without it would cause a civil war. He has allies on the council. I know, she said, and I think I know how to get it. Evelina's plan was simple, and therefore brilliant. He thinks I am a disgraced prisoner, she explained, her voice low as they stood on the windswept battlements. He thinks you despise me. He will see me as a potential ally. Alaric's brow furrowed. He will try to recruit you. He will try to use me. He will believe I am desperate for revenge against you. He will approach me, offering sympathy. And in his sympathy, he will boast. He will let something slip. It is too dangerous, Alaric said immediately. He is a snake. And I am from a family of snake charmers, Evelina countered, a small, grim smile touching her lips. I grew up in a court far more treacherous than this, Your Grace. My father's halls were full of men like Vance. I know how to handle him. Beatrice, she continued, my maid, she is terrified, but she is loyal. And she is invisible. Servants hear everything. Alaric was torn. His every instinct was to lock her away for her own safety. But he knew she was right. His direct military approach would fail. They needed subtlety. They needed a dagger in the dark, not a broadsword in the light. Thorn will be your shadow, he conceded, his voice harsh. He and his most trusted of men. You will not be left alone with Vance. Not for a moment. Agreed. But Vance must not see him. The next day, the charade began. Alaric was cold and dismissive at the morning council, pointedly ignoring Evelina's presence. He spoke of treacherous blood and Moorhaven vipers, his gaze sweeping over her. Evelina, for her part, looked broken. She sat pale and silent, her eyes downcast. Lord Vance watched this, a smug, satisfied look barely concealed. Later that day, he happened upon her in the library. She was forbidden from it, but had snuck in. Your Grace, Vance said, his voice a balm of false pity. I am so sorry to see you treated this way. The Duke is a hard man. He does not understand a lady's delicate sensibilities. Evelina looked up, her eyes wide with false fear. My lord, I should not be here. Nonsense, he said, stepping closer. You are the Duchess. This is your home. It is Alaric who forgets himself. He is blinded by his grief for his men. He thinks I am a traitor, she whispered, squeezing out a single, perfect tear. He hates me. He is a fool, Vance said smoothly. But do not worry. I am your friend. I will speak to him. I will try to mitigate his anger. He and I are, after all, family. Thank you, my lord, Evelina murmured, playing the part of the grateful, terrified girl. You are very kind. We must stick together, you and I, Vance said, taking her hand. She had to fight the urge to recoil. We are the only two reasonable people in this fortress of brutes. We both want peace and prosperity. While Evelina played the wounded bird, Beatrice, her maid, played the mouse. She crept through the servant passages, her ears sharp. She brought back whispers. Lord Vance's man, a fellow named Roger. He meets with a merchant in the lower town, Beatrice reported, her eyes bright with the thrill of espionage. They say he pays in gold, not Ironwall script, and he buys wine, casks and casks of it. But Lord Vance is not a heavy drinker. Where does the wine go? Evelina asked. No one knows, my lady. It's delivered to his private cellars, and his men move it from there. Evelina relayed this to Alaric during their now nightly, secret meetings on the battlements. Wine? Alaric was nonplussed. He's a smuggler? Or he's paying someone, Evelina said. Perhaps the bandits who attacked your convoy. Gold is heavy, but wine can be gifted. Or it's a code. Thorn, Alaric commanded, find out where that wine is going, and get me Vance's ledgers. Thorn and his men, loyal to the bone, ransacked Vance's offices, while the man was entertaining Evelina in the main hall, boasting of his influence. The ledgers were a disappointment. They were pristine. Too pristine. These are for show, Alaric said, disgusted. The real ones are hidden. Beatrice, Evelina said, an idea forming. Vance's man, Roger. He's the key. Where does he sleep? In the barracks, my lady, with the other household guards. Find a way to get his keys, or to get him out of the way. Beatrice, it turned out, was a far better actress than anyone knew. She accidentally spilled a tray of hot cider on Roger in the servants' hall. As he yelped and cursed, she helped him clean it up, her apologies profuse. In the confusion, her nimble fingers lifted the heavy ring of keys from his belt. She passed them to Thorn. That night, Thorn and Alaric descended into Vance's private cellars. The wine casks were there, but they didn't smell of grapes. Thorn put his shoulder to one. It was heavy. He jimmied the lid. It was not wine. It was full of weapons, muskets, swords, and, glinting in the lantern light, dozens of newly forged daggers. Each one bore the crest of the Moorhaven hawk. Alaric's blood froze. He wasn't just planning to start the war, Alaric whispered, his voice shaking with a rage so profound it was almost silent. He was planning to arm it, to arm my enemies. Your Grace, Thorn said, his voice grim. He had opened another cask. This one was full of parchment. It was the real ledger. Alaric unrolled the top scroll. It was a list of sales, ironwood, steel, weapons, and the buyer's one name stood out, Baron de Cressy. Alaric stared at it. No, he wouldn't. My lady, Thorn said, pointing to the bottom. The dates. This ledger is old. These are from before the treaty. This is what Vance was doing during the war. He was selling weapons to my father? Evelina said, her voice faint. She had followed them, unable to stay behind. He was selling to both sides, Alaric said, realization dawning. He was profiting from the slaughter, keeping the war balanced, so it would never end. He unrolled another scroll. This one was newer. It was a letter, not yet sent. To my partners in Moorhaven, the Duke has taken the bait. He believes his new bride is a traitor. The treaty will be declared void by week's end. Prepare your men at the Kestrel Pass. The Duke will move troops north in anger, leaving the pass vulnerable. We will strike there, and the Iron Duke's supply line will be cut for good. The final payment will be delivered as planned. He wasn't just framing you, Alaric said to Evelina, his voice rough. He was setting me up for a massacre, using my anger. using you to destroy me." "Alaric," Evelina said, her hand flying to her mouth. "The attack on the convoy, that was his payment. He gave his partners your supplies. And now he's planning to give them the Kestrel Pass." Alaric looked at his wife. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear and steady. She had not panicked. She had not wept. She had solved the puzzle. "He has to be stopped," she said. "He will be," Alaric replied, rolling the parchment back up. "He planned to use a public insult to start a war. I think it's only fitting that we use a public banquet to end one." The next evening, the great hall was set for a banquet. It was the first celebration since the wedding, and the household was tense. Alaric had announced it was to honor the memory of his fallen men, a grim pretext. Lord Vance was in his element, moving through the hall like a gracious host, accepting condolences, his face a mask of practiced sorrow. He caught Evelina's eye and gave her a small, conspiratorial smile, as if to say, "See, our plan is working." Evelina, dressed in a gown of deep iron-wall grey, looked the part of the grieving, disgraced wife. She sat at the high table, next to Alaric's empty chair, a picture of isolation. Alaric entered late, as was his custom. He did not go to the head of the table. Instead, he walked to the centre of the hall, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Captain Thorne and 10 of his most loyal guards fanned out, quietly barring the exits. The music stuttered and died. "My lords," Alaric began, his voice cutting through the sudden silence, "we gather to mourn. 20 of my men, murdered. A treaty, broken. My duchy, betrayed." He turned, his ice-grey eyes landing on Lord Vance. "We have searched for the viper in our midst, and we have found him." Vance's smile became fixed. "Your Grace, surely this is a time for mourning, not for accusations. We know the culprit, the Baron de Cressy." "Do we?" Alaric asked, taking a slow step toward his cousin. "Or do we only know what we were meant to see?" Alaric snapped his fingers. At the far end of the hall, the doors opened. 2 guards entered, carrying a crate. They dropped it at Vance's feet. The lid fell open, spilling dozens of the forged Moorhaven daggers onto the stone floor. They rang out, sharp and clear, in the silence. Vance's face went white. "You have a fondness for Moorhaven steel, cousin," Alaric said, his voice dangerously soft. "Or perhaps for copies of it. A useful tool to plant on a dead man, to frame a new bride." "This is slander," Vance blustered, looking around for support. "Duke, you are mad with grief. She has bewitched you." "She has enlightened me," Alaric countered. He pulled a rolled parchment from his belt. The ledger. "But perhaps you are right. A man's word is not enough. But what about his own ledger? A record of every betrayal, every sale of Ironwall steel to our enemies, every coin earned from the blood of our soldiers." He threw the ledger onto the table in front of Vance. Vance's eyes darted to the exits. They were blocked by Thorne's men. "This is a forgery!" Vance shouted, finding his voice. "A lie crafted by this Moorhaven witch." He pointed a shaking finger at Evelina. Evelina stood slowly. She did not look at Vance. She looked at Alaric. "He is right about one thing, Your Grace," she said, her voice clear and carrying. "They are lies, all of it." Alaric's head snapped toward her. The hall held its breath. "Evelina, what are you doing?" Alaric murmured. Vance laughed, a high, relieved sound. "You see, the woman herself confesses." Evelina walked down from the dais, her gaze fixed on Vance. "Such clumsy lies, Lord Vance. The ledgers a child could have found them." Vance's smile faltered. "But the real proof," Evelina continued, "is so much more elegant. You see, my lord, you were right. I am my father's daughter, and I know exactly who his partners are. She pulled a small, sealed letter from her sleeve. This arrived this morning, by a messenger from the Kestrel Pass. He was intercepted. She held it up. It is from Baron Cregan, one of my father's most notorious partners, as you called them. The men you intended to arm. Vance lunged for it. "Give me that!" Thorn's arm shot out, his steel gauntleted hand catching Vance across the chest, sending him stumbling back. "The letter," Evelina said, "is an offer. Baron Cregan, hearing that the treaty was broken, offers his condolences to you, Lord Vance, and a new price. He says, and I quote, 'The price for betraying your duke has gone up.'" It was a brilliant lie, a complete fabrication, written by her own hand that morning. But it was the final, perfect piece of the puzzle. Vance, trapped, knew it was over. "You!" he roared, his face purple with rage. He drew his own sword. "You will all die. My men!" He looked to the household guards, but they were Thorn's men. They did not move. "It is over, Geoffrey," Alaric said, drawing his own blade. "It is never over," Vance shrieked, and in a fit of mad desperation, he did not attack the Duke. He lunged for the Duchess. He was fast, but Alaric was faster. The Duke moved with a speed that belied his size. He didn't intercept Vance. He moved with him, spinning, and put himself directly between his wife and his cousin. Vance's sword, intended for Evelina, buried itself deep in Alaric's shoulder. Evelina screamed. Alaric didn't flinch. He grunted, the impact driving him back a step, but his grip on his own sword was sure. Before Vance could react, before he could pull his blade free, Alaric ran him through. "For Ironwall," Alaric grunted. Vance looked down at the blade in his chest, his expression one of pure shock. He crumpled to the floor. Silence. Then Alaric staggered. "Your Grace!" Thorn yelled, rushing forward. "Alaric!" Evelina was there, her hands on his chest, her face pale with terror. "You are hurt!" "It is just a scratch," he gasped, but a dark stain was already spreading across his uniform. His sword clattered to the floor. "Get him to his chambers," Thorn bellowed. "Fetch the Meister, now." Evelina held him, her small frame supporting his weight as he slumped. "Stay with me, Alaric," she whispered, her voice fierce, tears streaming down her face. "You are not allowed to die. That is an order from your Duchess." He looked at her, his vision blurring, a faint, pained smile on his lips. "As you command." He collapsed, and the last thing he saw before the darkness took him was her face, her beautiful, terrified face, framed by the chaos of the hall. He had saved her. He had saved his duchy, but he had not realized, until that very moment, that she was the one who had saved him. He woke to the smell of herbs and the sharp sting of pain. His shoulder was on fire. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed him back down. "Be still," a soft voice commanded. The Maester said, "You are not to move." Alaric's eyes focused. Evelina was sitting in a chair by his bed, her face exhausted, her hair loose. She had not left his side. He had been unconscious for 2 days. "Vance?" he rasped, his throat dry. "Dead," she said simply. "His few conspirators were rounded up by Captain Thorn. The letter you found in his cellar, the one detailing his sales to my father, Thorn leaked it. My father sent an envoy immediately. He was appalled. He had no idea his partners were being armed by an Ironwall lord. He has offered reparations." "Good," Alaric said, sinking back. The crisis was over. The treaty would hold. "You are a fool, Alaric Blackwood," she said, her voice suddenly trembling. He looked at her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was not crying now. She was angry. "You took a blade meant for me," she said, her voice low. "Why?" He was attacking my Duchess, Alaric managed. It is my duty to protect my assets. Your assets? She shot back, standing. Is that what I am to you? A ledger? A piece of property to be protected? No, he said, and the word was torn from him. He reached with his good hand, his fingers brushing her wrist. Her skin was warm. Evelina, no. She stopped, her anger faltering at the raw emotion in his voice. When I stood on that battlement, he said, his voice quiet. Waiting for you, I was a man of stone. I was a fortress. I had no one. I had duty. I had war. And I had a loneliness so deep I had mistaken it for strength. He looked at his hand, still on her wrist. I have been a duke my entire life. I have never been a man. Not really. I did not know how. I command. I rule. I do not connect. Alaric, she whispered. You came here, he continued, and you did not break. You did not shatter against the walls. You methodical, brilliant, you mapped them. You learned my fortress. You found the weaknesses. Not in the stone, but in my counsel. In me. He met her gaze, his grey eyes clear and stripped of all their defences. When Vance lunged at you, it was not duty that moved me. I did not see an asset. I did not see the Duchess or the treaty. I saw you, Evelina. And the thought of him, of the world continuing on without you in it, was unacceptable. Tears wells in her eyes, and this time they fell. I thought you hated me, she said. I thought I did too, he admitted. You were inconvenient. You made me feel. I have not felt in a very long time. It was terrifying. She gave a small, watery laugh. The great Iron Duke terrified. By me. By you, he confirmed, his thumb tracing a circle on her skin. She sat on the edge of the bed, her anger gone, replaced by a profound, fragile hope. You were lonely, Alaric, she said softly. But so was I. I was a pawn, traded for peace. I came here expecting a brute. I found a man hiding inside a duke's uniform. You did not end the war, Evelina, he said, his voice rough. The treaty did that. But you came into my fortress. You walked through my defences. You faced my traitors. And you ended the loneliness. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his good shoulder. He could feel her warmth, smell the scent of herbs and old books in her hair. What do we do now, Duke? She whispered. His good arm came up, circling her waist, pulling her closer. It was the first time he had ever held her. It felt right. It felt like a lock clicking into place. Now, Duchess, he said, his lips brushing her hair. We heal. We rebuild. And if you are willing, we can stop being a treaty. And we can start being a marriage. She lifted her head, her green eyes shining. She smiled, a real, radiant smile that lit up the dark, austere room. I think, she said, I would like that very much. She leaned in, and for the first time, the Duke and his Duchess truly met. It was not a kiss of duty or of contract. It was a kiss of shared silence, of proven trust, and the quiet, unshakable promise of a new beginning. The battle for the duchy is over, but the journey for Alaric and Evelina has just begun. Theirs was a marriage born of duty, forged in betrayal, and finally sealed by love. What did you think of Evelina's courage? Did you suspect Lord Vance from the start? Let me know your favourite twist in the comments below. This was a story of two lonely people, trapped by their roles, who found an unexpected ally and a profound love in the last person on earth they expected. If you love stories of historical drama, strategic romance, and powerful twists, then don't forget to like this video, share it with a fellow romance lover, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this. Click that bell icon so you never miss an update. Thank you for listening.